Hello and welcome to the Friday edition of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. I'm your host, King Jemison, coming to you from a Pittsburgh that is as cold as the Penguins are hot, and that's saying something. The Pens have won 5 straight and are now 12-2-2 since the holiday break after smoking the Blackhawks last night in PPG Paints Arena. The playoffs are starting to get pretty big in the window. They have an 84.6% playoff probability according to Money Puck. That's the 8th highest in the league. So the stat gurus are starting to see what Pens fans have seen for a while. This team is really good, and the path to the playoffs is fairly clear given the weakness of the Metro. So we're going to talk about a couple of guys who had big games last night, a couple of new faces in the lineup as well on Thursday against Chicago. But first, I want to remind you that this show is presented by FanDuel, where you can bet on all the NHL action. Just one game tonight, a very light slate here on Friday. The surging Blue Jackets play at Chicago at 8:30 p.m. The Blue Jackets are minus 146 favorites at FanDuel in that game on NHL Network. Just imagine where they'd be if they still had Egor Chinakhov. But the Penguins are also now up to the 8th shortest odds to make the playoffs at FanDuel at minus 240. So if you believe in this team, I hope you got your bets in long ago. So let's talk about last night's 6-2 win over the Blackhawks. It did not start looking like a game that was going to be a 6-2 final score dominant romp. It was a pretty bad first period for the Penguins. They gave up the first goal in the first period. They allowed 8 high danger scoring chances while generating just 2. And they took 4 penalties. So they spent some time on the penalty kill. A couple of those turned into, penalties on both sides. So that they weren't full power play opportunities for Chicago, but certainly all that disrupted any offensive rhythm that the Penguins might have. And listen, that kind of made sense. This team played on Sunday. This team traveled across the continent on Monday from Vancouver. They had only practiced one time between Monday and Wednesday. Them looking a little bit sloppy, a little bit rusty, and not really having their legs in the first period made sense. But the way they turned it on in the second period was like nothing we've really seen this season. It was one of their best periods of the season. They outshot Chicago 23-6 in the second period. I was, in a scrum with Rucker McGroarty after the game, and he was just talking about how they're a very scary team when they can get the opponent hemmed in, and the Penguins are making line changes in the offensive zone. They're not allowing the defense to change, and that was how they lived in that second period. It was really something to watch. With that 23-6 shots advantage, they racked up 4 goals while not allowing a single one, and took a 5-1 lead into the third period. So it was about as good as they can possibly play. And Anthony Mantha had a hand in 3 of those 4 goals, about as good as he can possibly play as well. And we're going to talk about him later. And then the Penguins' 2 goals that did not come in the second period came courtesy of Mr. Connor Dewar, who registered his second multi-goal performance in the past 5 games. Like, he had 2 against Seattle about 10 days or so ago, week and a half ago. And then he has 2 against Chicago. The dude knows how to score. And so we're going to talk about him as well. He's up to 13 goals on the season, a new career high. Ben Kindle scored again in that second period. Egor Chinakhov scored again in that second period. Along with Dewar, those guys are all 26 or under. I mean, Kindle's 18, Chinakhov's 24, and then Dewar's 26. And so it's just pretty amazing to see this rebuild on the fly actually leading to good performances on the ice. That you have a bunch of young guys who are not only setting the table for a strong future, but are helping you win right now, and have given this team some real energy that it has certainly lacked in recent years. And then got to say that Artur Shilovs was quite good again. I wondered if Stuart Skinner might start, and that the true one-to-one rotation might truly have been broken. That might still be the case, but I think Dan Muse probably wanted to get Shilovs some reps, given that otherwise he wouldn't. He last played a week before last night's game, so Thursday night, a week before in Edmonton. And he's played well in both of those games. Like, yes, I think Stuart Skinner's the better goalie, but it's hard to not give Shilovs opportunities because he's playing some of his best hockey of the season as well. he was really big in the first period when the Blackhawks did have the momentum, when they were on the power play. Solovyov stymied some really good chances and only allowed one goal that Connor Dewar fairly quickly matched to make it 1-1 into the first intermission. So let's dive into a couple of the big performances from this Blackhawks game and sort of what it says about these guys' season. So I wrote about Blake Lizotte's incredible impact on this team earlier this week, the fourth line center who, of course, got a contract extension to keep him around for 3 more years after this one earlier this season. And I asked Sportlogic for some data on Lizotte and his impact. And, they gave some really incredible numbers. And the way they summarize it is he could hardly be contributing more with his limited ice time than what he's doing this season. He's one of the best penalty killers in the league going into this week. If you looked at going into Thursday night's game, if you looked at the 109 NHL players with at least 100 minutes on the penalty kill, Blake Lizotte had the lowest goals against average in the league. So among high-volume penalty killers, you could argue he's literally been the best. He had incredible hustle numbers that Sportlogic found, and it all leads to a pretty amazing differential where both in expected goals and actual goals, when Lizotte and the fourth line are on the ice, they are outscoring opponents. They are out-generating opponents, and it is always something to watch. And that differential grew yesterday. Lizotte assisted both of Dewar's goals, and Dewar is just really finding ways to score both greasy goals, as Dan Muse put it, and also impressive goals. Like I asked Dan Muse after the game, like, what do you see from Dewar as a goal scorer? The guy's got 13 this season. He's among the team leaders in that category. He's tied with Evgeny Malkin for 5th on the team in goals, despite playing this fourth line primarily defensive role. And he started with saying, like, he's just a really good hockey player. This isn't surprising to me. And he would repeat that line later on when talking about other players as well. Dan Muse believed in his guys, and I think they feel that belief. But he just said he's got more skill. He didn't say more skill than people give him credit for, but I'll interpret it that way. That he said, he can get to the right areas. He gets in front of the net, and he gets goals like his third period goal Thursday against Chicago, where he just is amid traffic and finds the puck and pokes it through. And then he has some really, really impressive shots too. I think about his breakaway goal against Seattle. There was a shorthanded breakaway, and he absolutely rifled that puck. The guy's got a pretty good shot, which is something Muse noted as well. And he's kind of been the finisher on a fourth line that generates a lot of chances, and that's important because they very well could be playing so well, possessing the puck, getting shots, and not having them convert. But in large part, thanks to Connor Dewar, they have been able to really put some points on the scoreboard in addition to holding down opponents. And, for that Lizotte story, I asked him how Dan Muse has helped him this season, and he gave a really interesting answer, basically talking about how, this is a game of mistakes, and mistakes are going to happen. And there's not necessarily a reprimand when they do. Dan Muse trusts them. He sends them back over the boards again. And he said that's a big difference from last year. And I don't think that was intended as a shot at Mike Sullivan. I think it was intended as a compliment to Dan Muse. But they will see Mike Sullivan and the Rangers tomorrow on Saturday in PPG Paints Arena. So another guy who deserves a shout out is the leading point scorer Thursday night in the Penguins' 6-goal outburst. Anthony Mantha had 3 points all in the second period, and now he's up to 3rd on the team with 17 goals. He's 4th on the team with 38 points. He's doing a lot of things well. The team's 3.25 goals per 60 minutes with him on the ice is one of the highest marks on the team. This guy just generating offense, and I think he's been a part of lines that have been responsible defensively as well. And he had a quiet stretch, a pretty long stretch without a goal going into the Edmonton game last Thursday. He scores 2 in the first period there. He scores another in the second period today and assists 2 more. The offense is fully back for him. And that line with Ben Kendall has been really good. And even with the shakeup where Justin Brazeau hops up to the top line with Brian Rust suspended. And I guess that's Something we haven't talked about the podcast, Bryan Rust, yes, he got suspended for 3 games. He just served the first of that 3-game suspension for an illegal check to the head in Vancouver. Dan Muse disagreed with the length of that suspension, talking about the very clean history of Bryan Rust in the league. And I was surprised it was 3 games. I was not surprised there was a suspension, but so far so good. The team handled the lineup shakeup pretty darn well, with Brazeau going to the top line and Rutger McGroarty stepping on to the third line. And so talking about Rutger real quick, he had not played an NHL game since January 3rd. He'd been scratched for a game after that and then had a concussion, suffered in practice, went down to Wilkes-Barre upon his return. Didn't really look like there's a clear path to playing time for him, but he always maintains a positive attitude. I spoke with him over the phone while he was in Wilkes-Barre. He had a great quote about looking to always grow where he's planted and how much he was enjoying his time in Wilkes-Barre. And sure enough, in a case of a good thing happening to a good person, Bryan Rust exiting the lineup means that Rutger McGroarty got an opportunity again very shortly after that and played really well. Somehow he didn't have a point Thursday against Chicago, but he had a big hand in that second period. He was +3. I believe he had 4 shots on goal in the second period alone, and just was making a ton of hustle plays, a ton of crisp passes that were helping keep the Penguins attack moving in that period. And I think he was pretty encouraged by the performance afterwards, even if, he really wants to score and see that puck go in the back of the net. He had some good shots that eventually are going to start falling, but I thought a very, very strong and encouraging return for Rutger McGroarty. Another guy who entered the lineup, this time for the very first time in a Penguins uniform, Ilya Solovyov came in and played quite well on the blue line. Unfortunately, Jack St. Ivany is going to be out for a while, up to 8 weeks expected recovery time after a hand surgery. I thought that Connor Clifton would probably go into the lineup. That's not where Dan Muse turned. He turned to their January 20th trade acquisition, Ilya Solovyov, and the 25-year-old played really, really well. He did have a point. He gave the primary assist to Ryan Shea, who just unleashed a bomb and has a pretty dangerous shot that's led to quite a few tip-in goals from other guys, and this time he gets credit for it. And Solovyov threw a nice pass across the ice to his defensive partner, and I thought they worked very well as a duo. They were both +3 in their time out there. And Solovyov's size, 6'3", 208 pounds, had a clear impact in this game. And Muse talked about it afterwards. Like, he just has an ability to, get to the puck and use his physicality to make things difficult for opponents. And so I think another bargain bin pickup by Kyle Dubas that is looking really, really effective. I think, we'll probably see Solovyov continue to play if he can turn in more performances like that one. And I thought it was funny. I asked him about that performance afterwards, and how did he feel about his Penguins debut? That was a very open-ended question that I kind of figured what the answer would be. He was like, "Oh, I feel pretty good. Pick up a point, 6-2 win, +3 rating." He's like, "Honestly, best debut so far for me." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a pretty good debut for anybody." So the Penguins keep it rolling despite people in and out of the lineup. Egor Chinakhov keeps it rolling. We haven't even really talked about him, but he had yet another goal. He's up to 6 in 14 games with the Penguins. This guy has star written all over him. And so some of these in-season moves between getting rid of Tristan Jarry, who was playing well, but bringing in a goalie in Stuart Skinner, who's now playing even better. That also netted Brett Kulak. Then you add Egor Chinakhov, who's gone from kind of buried in the Columbus lineup to a featured top 6 member in Pittsburgh who just can't stop scoring. And then you look at a very small move on the margins like Ilya Solovyov, a depth defenseman who seems capable of coming in and contributing in a big way. So a big win for the Penguins Thursday. They have a couple more opportunities at home to pick up points and continue moving up in the division. They play the Rangers at 3:30 p.m. Saturday. Then they play the Senators on Monday night. And right now, the Penguins are in second in the Metro. They've got a 6-point cushion on the Capitals in fourth. So if they just keep it even at a similar level to how they're playing right now, the path to the playoffs is clear. So that's going to do it for the Friday edition of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. Please like and subscribe wherever you're seeing and watching this. And please subscribe at post-gazette.com. I have a story up today on the HBK line that helped bring the Penguins that 2016 Cup they'll celebrate tomorrow. It was great to chat with Nick Bonino and Carl Hagelin for that story. And I will be back with you Monday to recap the Rangers game and any news from the weekend. Until then, thanks so much for watching and stay warm.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.